Princess Veyra had learned to arrive at the Grand Assembly exactly on time. Not early, which would mean enduring longer stretches of isolation. Not late, which would draw attention she didn't want. Exactly on time, allowing her to take her seat and fade into the background as quickly as possible. The assembly hall was magnificent, soaring ceilings, crystalline architecture that caught the light in patterns that would have been beautiful if Veyra could appreciate them anymore. She'd attended these gatherings for 18 years, ever since her condition had been diagnosed and her place in society redefined. Flawed, that's what they called her. A princess born with weak, erratic psychic abilities in a culture that measured worth by mental strength. Her title came from birthright, but it offered no protection against the quiet cruelty of nobles who believed her very existence diminished their species' reputation. Veyra took her seat in the general nobility section. It was the same seat she always chose, near the middle, not drawing attention but not hiding in the back either. She sat with her back straight, her expression carefully neutral, and waited. Within minutes, the nobles nearby began to move. Lord Kessar suddenly remembered he needed to speak with someone across the hall. Lady Thura decided she preferred a seat with a better view. A young couple who had been sitting 2 seats away relocated entirely, whispering to each other as they left. Within 10 minutes, there was a visible gap around Veyra. Empty seats on all sides. No one would sit beside the flawed princess. Veyra kept her expression neutral. She'd had 18 years of practice. The whispers started. Not loud enough to be confrontational, but loud enough to be heard. Such a shame. The emperor should have chosen a different heir. Imagine if she ruled. The empire would be humiliated. Veyra's hands tightened slightly in her lap, but she didn't react. Reacting only made it worse. Then someone sat down beside her. Veyra turned, startled, and found herself looking at a human man she'd never seen before. He was smiling, a genuine, friendly expression that caught her completely off guard. "Mind if I sit here?" he asked in heavily accented Kessar. Veyra stared at him. No one asked to sit beside her. No one smiled at her like she was just another person. "Of course," she managed. The man settled into the seat comfortably. "I'm Julian Drake, Human Diplomatic Corps, just assigned here last week. Still figuring everything out honestly. This place is incredible." He gestured at the hall and Veyra realized he genuinely meant it. He wasn't being polite, he was impressed. "It is traditional," Veyra said carefully. "I'll say. The architecture alone is amazing. We don't have anything like this on Earth. Well, we have impressive buildings, but not with this kind of material." "What is this? Some kind of crystalline composite?" Veyra found herself explaining the construction techniques, the way Kessar engineers had developed methods to grow structures rather than build them. Julian listened with genuine interest, asking follow-up questions, comparing it to human engineering approaches. Around them, the whispers grew louder. Nobles were staring. Some looked scandalized, others amused. A few seemed curious about whether the human knew what he was doing. Veyra knew, she knew exactly what was happening. This human, this Julian Drake, had no idea he'd just committed a significant social transgression. But he kept talking to her like she was someone worth talking to. Like she was just another person at a formal event. Veyra hadn't felt that way in 18 years. The assembly proceeded with the usual formal speeches and ceremonial acknowledgments. During breaks, Julian continued their conversation, asking about Kessar culture, admitting when he didn't understand something, laughing at his own mispronunciations. Veyra found herself relaxing, actually relaxing, answering his questions honestly, even smiling occasionally. Then Ambassador Chen appeared. She was Julian's supervisor. Veyra knew from the diplomatic briefings she still received despite her status. Chen approached with a polite expression and asked to speak with Julian privately. Julian excused himself, and Veyra watched as Chen pulled him aside, speaking quietly but urgently. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she could see Julian's expression change, confusion, then disbelief, then something that looked like anger. He glanced back at Veyra. She looked away, already knowing what was being explained to him. The flawed princess, the noble no one sat with, the transgression he'd committed unknowingly. Veyra waited for him to find a polite excuse to leave, to relocate like everyone else did once they understood. Instead, Julian returned to his seat beside her. "You know now," Veyra said quietly, not looking at him, "you know why no one sits with me." Yeah, I know. And yet you're still here. Why wouldn't I be? Julian's voice was matter of fact. You're good company, better than half the people I've talked to today, honestly. Vera turned to look at him, searching for mockery or pity. She found neither. Just genuine confusion about why sitting beside her should be a problem. My people believe I am flawed, Vera said carefully. That my weak psychic abilities make me unworthy of respect. Sitting with me reflects poorly on those who choose to do so. Julian frowned. That's discrimination. It is tradition. Still discrimination. He paused. Does it bother you when I sit here? No. Then I'm staying. It was such a simple statement, such a straightforward human response, and it meant more than Julian could possibly understand. The climax came during the formal acknowledgment of noble families. The emperor stood to recognize the great houses, calling each by name. Tradition dictated that families stand together, displaying their unity before the throne. When the imperial family was called, Veyra's parents and siblings rose. Her two brothers stood tall, their psychic presence resonating through the hall in the way all-powerful Kessar could achieve. Her sister stood beside them, elegant and composed. There was no place for Veyra in their formation. She remained seated, as she had at every assembly since her diagnosis. The moment was designed to reinforce her exclusion, to remind everyone that she was not truly part of the imperial family despite her title. Veyra stared straight ahead, willing herself not to feel the familiar ache of rejection. Then Julian stood, not in the imperial formation, but beside her seat. A silent statement that she was not alone. The hall noticed immediately. Whispers became gasps. Nobles turned to stare. Ambassador Chen looked horrified. The emperor's gaze shifted from his standing children to Julian, then to Veyra, then back to Julian. His expression was unreadable. The moment stretched. Tension built like a physical weight. Finally, the emperor nodded slightly and continued the ceremony. Julian sat back down. Veyra couldn't speak, couldn't process what had just happened. When the assembly finally ended, Veyra found Julian in the palace gardens, away from the crowds and whispers. "Why did you stand?" she asked. Julian looked at her like the answer should be obvious. "Because you deserve to have someone stand with you. Because what they're doing to you is wrong, and I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. It won't change anything. The court's prejudice is too deeply rooted." "Maybe, but at least you know someone sees it. Someone thinks it's wrong." He smiled slightly. "That counts for something, doesn't it?" Veyra realized it did. For the first time in 18 years, she didn't feel completely alone. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't thank me for basic decency. That's not something that deserves special recognition." But in Veyra's world, it was. Basic decency had been absent for so long that its return felt revolutionary. Weeks passed. Julian continued to sit with Veyra at every formal gathering. Ambassador Chen eventually stopped trying to convince him to relocate, though she made it clear this was complicating diplomatic relations. Julian didn't seem to care. And slowly, imperceptibly, something shifted. A young scholar named Thuris began sitting one section over from Veyra, not beside her, but closer than anyone else had dared in years. A junior diplomat from another species asked Veyra a direct question during a reception, treating her like someone whose opinion mattered. The whispers didn't stop, but they changed tones slightly, from certainty to uncertainty. At the next Grand Assembly, Veyra took her usual seat. Julian sat beside her, as he always did now, and then Thuris sat down, not next to Veyra, but nearby, close enough that